Welcome to our deep dive into the Midnight Library by Matt Haig. Um, this book, it takes us on this journey with Nora Seed, a woman who is like drowning in regret and stumbles upon a library between life and death, where each book offers her a chance to kind of rewrite her past.
Yeah. So the story begins by introducing us to Nora at her lowest point. She's grappling with these feelings of failure and a deep sense of disappointment in the life that she's living.
Yeah, right from the start, we see a series of events that led her to this place,
Right.
right? The death of her beloved cat Volts, losing her job at the music shop,
Mhm.
and strained relationships with her brother and best friend.
Right. All these events, they kind of act like these catalysts, pushing Nora towards this decision to end her life. But instead of finding oblivion, she finds herself in this mysterious midnight library.
Okay, so let's talk about this library.
Yeah.
What exactly is it, and what's its significance in Nora's journey?
Hmm. The Midnight Library is described as this place existing between life and death, like a liminal space, where Nora is given this opportunity to explore alternate realities based on all the different choices that she could have made throughout her life. It's almost as if regret itself has become like a physical space.
And who is this Mrs. Elm character? She seems to play a crucial role in guiding Nora through this strange new world.
So Mrs. Elm was actually Nora's childhood librarian, a figure who represented comfort and guidance during a difficult time in Nora's younger years. And in the Midnight Library, she acts as a sort of mentor, encouraging Nora to explore these alternate lives and discover what they might teach her.
So it's not just about escaping her current reality, but about learning from these different paths.
Exactly. Mrs. Elm emphasizes that each book in the library represents a life Nora could have lived, each branching out from a specific decision or turning point.
So where does Nora's exploration begin? Which what if does she tackle first?
One of the first lives Nora steps into is the one where she stayed with her fiancé, Dan, and pursued his dream of running a pub in the countryside. It's a life that she had longed for at one point, but ultimately chose to walk away from.
This seems like a classic grass is always greener scenario. What does she discover about this seemingly idyllic life?
Well, as Nora delves deeper into this reality, she uncovers this harsh truth. Dan, despite achieving his dream, is not the man she remembers. He's become distant, complacent, and even unfaithful.
So even in a life where a cherished dream is realized, there's still unhappiness and disappointment.
It highlights the idea that external achievements don't necessarily equate to internal fulfillment. And perhaps even more importantly, it shows that people evolve and change in ways we can't always predict.
It definitely makes you question whether holding on to the past to a specific idealized version of someone is truly beneficial. What happens next? Does Nora stay in this life?
No, she doesn't. Nora finds herself feeling like a spectator, an imposter even, in this version of her life. She returns to the Midnight Library, realizing that this particular path doesn't hold the answers that she's seeking.
So back to the library and on to the next what if. What does Nora choose to explore next?
This time she decides to revisit a decision that has haunted her with guilt. The choice to let her cat Volts roam freely outside, leading to his untimely death.
Ah, the guilt of pet ownership. We've all been there.
Oh,
Did she manage to save Volts in this alternate reality?
this is where the book introduces a fascinating concept. In this life, Nora did keep Volts inside, showering him with love and attention. However, he still dies this time from a heart condition.
So even when she changes her actions, the outcome remains the same. What's the lesson here?
It underscores the limitations of our control. Some things, like the loss of a loved one, are simply inevitable. And while we might carry regret for the choices we made, sometimes those choices have less impact than we imagine.
That's a powerful realization, and one that probably brings a sense of relief to Nora. Does this experience shift her perspective at all?
It does. She begins to understand that dwelling on the past on things she can't change is futile. This realization empowers her to delve deeper into the library, ready to explore other regrets, other possible paths.
So which door does she choose next? What other what if calls to her?
The next book she chooses takes her to a life where she pursued her father's unfulfilled dream, becoming an Olympic swimmer. It's a life filled with rigorous training, intense competition, and the thrill of victory.
Okay, this is a complete departure from the previous life.
Yeah.
It seems like she's jumping from one extreme to the other.
It's almost as if she's testing the boundaries of her potential, exploring paths that are vastly different from the life she's been living. And in this life, she does achieve incredible success, standing on the podium with a gold medal, the embodiment of her father's pride.
So she finally achieves that elusive feeling of external validation. Does this bring her the happiness she's been searching for?
Not quite. As Nora basks in the glow of her Olympic triumph, she discovers a heartbreaking truth. In this reality, her mother died much younger, a consequence of her father living longer and them not meeting at the hospital where her mother was a nurse.
Wow. That's a heavy realization. It suggests that every choice, every gain comes with a potential loss.
Exactly. It forces Nora to confront the complexities of her desires. Would she truly be happy achieving a dream at the cost of her mother's life? It's a question that underscores the interconnectedness of our choices and the ripple effects they can have on those around us.
This definitely adds another layer to the whole what-if scenario. It's not just about personal happiness, but about the unintended consequences our choices can have on others. So after this emotionally charged experience, where does Nora's journey take her next?
Well, that's a story for part 2 of our deep dive. We'll pick up with Nora's continued exploration of the Midnight Library and the increasingly complex lessons she learns along the way.
I'm definitely intrigued to hear what other lives Nora steps into and what those experiences reveal about her search for meaning and fulfillment. Be sure to join us for part 2, where we'll continue to unravel the mysteries of the Midnight Library. Welcome back to our deep dive into the Midnight Library. So when we left off, Nora had just experienced a life where she became an Olympic swimmer, achieving her father's dream, but at the cost of her mother's life. You know, it raised some heavy questions about the interconnectedness of choices and their unintended consequences.
Yeah, that experience was a turning point for Nora. It shifted her focus from solely pursuing personal fulfillment to considering the broader impact of her choices on, like, those she loves.
So where does she go next? What other paths does she choose to explore in the Midnight Library?
The next book she opens transports her to the Arctic, where she's living a life as a glaciologist. This is a path rooted in her childhood passion for understanding the natural world and the science behind climate change.
This seems like a complete departure from the world of competitive sports. It's fascinating how each life she chooses reflects different aspects of her personality and interests.
Exactly. And this life offers a unique kind of awakening for Nora. She's surrounded by the raw beauty and power of nature, far removed from the pressures and expectations of her previous lives.
It sounds almost idyllic. Does she find peace and contentment in this life dedicated to scientific exploration?
It's not without its challenges. In fact, Nora has a near-death encounter with a polar bear, a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the ever-present possibility of loss.
Wow, talk about a wake-up call. How does this experience affect her?
Instead of being paralyzed by fear, it ignites within her a renewed sense of purpose and a deep appreciation for the preciousness of life. It's a pivotal moment in her journey, a shift from seeking happiness in external achievements to finding meaning in the simple act of being alive.
It seems like each life she experiences is chipping away at the layers of regret and disillusionment, revealing a stronger, more resilient core. What happens after her time in the Arctic? Does she return to the Midnight Library?
Yes, she does. And this time she chooses a life where she pursued a career as a musician alongside her brother Joe, forming a band called the Labyrinths.
Ah, the allure of rock and roll. This sounds like a path filled with passion, creativity, and the thrill of performing on stage. What does she discover about this version of herself?
It's a life full of highs and lows. She experiences the exhilaration of creative collaboration, the joy of connecting with audiences through music, and the camaraderie of being a band with her brother. However, there's also a dark side to this life.
What kind of darkness does she encounter in this world of music and fame?
The band achieves a certain level of success, but it comes at a price. Joe struggles with addiction, ultimately succumbing to a drug overdose. It's a tragic loss that shatters Nora, leaving her feeling responsible for her brother's downfall.
That's a heartbreaking turn of events. It reinforces the idea that even in lives filled with passion and purpose, there can be immense pain and loss. Does this experience make her question the pursuit of creative dreams?
It certainly raises questions about the sacrifices we make for our art, the potential consequences of ambition, and the importance of prioritizing the well-being of ourselves and those we love. It's a sobering reminder that no path is without its challenges.
So after experiencing the highs and lows of a life dedicated to music, where does Nora's journey take her next?
She returns to the Midnight Library, continuing her search for a life that feels truly fulfilling. And this time she stumbles upon a life that seems on the surface to be everything she ever wanted.
Okay, this sounds intriguing. What does this seemingly perfect life look like?
In this life, Nora is married to a kind and loving man named Ash. They have a beautiful daughter named Molly, a fulfilling job, and a comfortable home. It's a life filled with love, stability, and contentment.
It sounds like she's finally found that elusive happily ever after. Does she feel a sense of peace and belonging in this life?
Initially, she does. She embraces the joys of motherhood, the warmth of a loving partnership, and the satisfaction of a life well lived. However, as she settles into this seemingly idyllic existence, a nagging feeling begins to creep in.
What kind of feeling? Was there something missing? Did she realize this life isn't as perfect as it seems?
It's not that it's imperfect, it's more a question of authenticity. She begins to realize that while this life is filled with genuine happiness, it's not a happiness she truly earned. It's a life built on the choices of a different version of herself.
So even though she's experiencing all the things she thought she wanted, there's a sense of disconnect, a feeling of not being fully aligned with this version of herself.
Exactly. It's a profound realization. She comes to understand that true happiness isn't about finding the perfect external circumstances, but about living in alignment with your values, your choices, your authentic self.
So despite the allure of this seemingly perfect life, she can't shake the feeling that it's not truly hers. What happens next?
Yeah.
Does she try to force herself to stay? Does she return to the Midnight Library?
Well, that's a question we'll explore in the final part of our deep dive. We'll delve into Nora's decision, the consequences of her choice, and the ultimate lessons she learns on her journey through the Midnight Library.
I'm definitely on the edge of my seat, wanting to know what happens next and what insights Nora ultimately gains from this extraordinary experience. Join us for part 3 as we conclude our deep dive into the Midnight Library. Welcome back to our deep dive into the Midnight Library. When we left off, Nora had discovered a life that seemed perfect, a loving family and a fulfilling career. But it lacked authenticity because it wasn't built from her own choices. So what happens next?
Well, she tries to embrace this, borrowed happiness to convince herself that it's enough, but the pull of her own identity, her own journey is just too strong to ignore.
So even though she's surrounded by love and contentment, a part of her still yearns for something more.
Yeah, exactly. It's like she's realizing that true fulfillment isn't about achieving some state of static happiness, but about engaging in this process of making choices that resonate with like her deepest self.
That makes me think about all those times I've chased after some external marker of success or happiness, only to find that it didn't truly satisfy. Seems like Nora's coming to a similar realization.
Right, and with this realization, she makes a decision that speaks volumes about her growth throughout this whole journey. She chooses to leave this seemingly perfect life and return to the Midnight Library.
Wow, that must have been an incredibly difficult choice. Leaving behind a life with so much love and joy, what drives her to make that decision?
I think it's not about rejecting the beauty of that life, but acknowledging that it's not her story to live. She's yearning to create a life that's authentically hers, even if it means facing the uncertainties and challenges of her root life.
That's a powerful statement about the importance of agency, of choosing our own path, even if it's less conventionally perfect. What happens when she gets back to the Midnight Library?
Upon her return, she notices a change in the library itself. It's begun to deteriorate. Books are disappearing, and there's this pervasive sense of urgency in the air.
That sounds ominous. Is it like the library itself is reflecting Nora's internal state, or is something else happening?
It's a fascinating parallel, isn't it? As Nora confronts these profound questions about identity and choice, the very foundation of the Midnight Library seems to be crumbling. And what's more, her watch, which has been frozen at midnight this whole time, suddenly starts ticking again.
So time is running out. Is this a sign that her time in the Midnight Library is coming to an end?
Well, Mrs. Elm appears and offers this warning that Nora might actually be dying in her root life.
Oh, wow.
However, something has fundamentally shifted within Nora. She no longer desires death. In fact, she's filled with this desperate longing to live, to return to her own life and make the most of it.
That's a remarkable transformation. It's like all these experiences in alternate realities have shown her the inherent value of her own life, imperfections and all.
Right. Driven by this newfound determination, she races through the library, searching for the book that represents her root life, the one she initially dismissed as filled with failure and disappointment.
She's no longer running away from her life, but running towards it. What happens when she finds the book?
In a moment of powerful self-affirmation, she takes a pen and writes, "I am alive," on one of its blank pages.
Wow.
It's a declaration of her choice to embrace her existence flaws and to fight for her own life.
It's as if she's rewriting the narrative, her own story, choosing to define herself on her own terms. Such a powerful image. What happens next? Does she return to her root life?
The moment she makes that declaration, the Midnight Library vanishes, and she finds herself back in her root reality, teetering on the brink of death from her suicide attempt. But she's no longer passive or resigned. She fights to survive, calling out to her neighbor for help, and ultimately ends up in the hospital.
She's gone from wanting to end her life to actively fighting for it. It's incredible to witness this transformation.
And it's not just about survival. Her experiences have also given her this newfound appreciation for her relationships. She reconciles with her brother, expressing her love for him and her commitment to being present in his life.
So she's not only choosing life, but she's choosing connection, choosing to rebuild the bonds that had frayed.
Precisely. And we see this commitment to connection in her rekindled friendship with Izzy and her heartfelt interactions with other people in her life.
Such a powerful message about the importance of human connection, of cherishing the people who bring meaning to our lives. There's a beautiful sense of closure when she visits Mrs. Elm one last time.
Yes, they're back in Nora's root life, no longer in the Midnight Library. And they're playing a game of chess. It's this poignant symbol of how life is full of unexpected moves, and we can only play the game to the best of our ability, accepting both victories and defeats.
I love that analogy. It speaks to the idea of letting go of the need to control every aspect of our lives and embracing the uncertainties that come with simply being human. What's the ultimate takeaway for Nora? What does she learn from this extraordinary journey through the Midnight Library?
Ultimately, she learns that there is no perfect life, no magical solution to unhappiness. True fulfillment comes from accepting ourselves, making peace with our choices, and embracing the beauty and the messiness of our own unique journey. It's about finding the courage to live authentically, to make the most of the present moment, and to keep striving to become the best versions of ourselves, one choice at a time.
The Midnight Library offers such a thought-provoking exploration of regret, second chances, and the search for meaning. It reminds us that even when life feels messy and uncertain, it's still a gift worth cherishing.
And it leaves us with a question to ponder. What regrets would we explore if given the chance? And more importantly, what choices can we make today to create a life that aligns with our values and brings us a sense of purpose and joy?
That's a great question for all of us to consider. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Midnight Library. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep living your own unique story.